T, live on Facebook and YouTube. Join us as we discuss pertinent issues that relates to you and I with your host, Alinko.
Good evening, everyone. Today is December 21st, 2022. We're excited to be coming your way. This is the Progressive Mind Show, your number one community building show in the world. We're live on Facebook and on YouTube, also on Twitter. This evening, we'll be talking about heart attacks and liver diseases. Dr. BERTHA will be joining us very soon. We sincerely want to apologize in the late start of the show. My name is Senna, aka Alinko, and I'll be helped on this show by my co-host Angie Mims. Captain Mike will take a segment. Right after that, we'll go into the conversation. Captain Mike, I know we have some good news coming in terms of weather, so please give it to us.
Oh yeah, if you're Frosty the Snowman, you're gonna love it. Well, right now at Midway Airport, we have 30 degrees, light winds out of the southeast, and we'll keep that for the rest of the night. We'll have east winds 5 to 10 miles an hour and low of about 30 degrees. And tomorrow, everything is about to change. So let's take a look at what we can expect tomorrow. Somewhere between 10 a.m. to noon, we're going to have a cold front come through. The snow is going to start. We're only going to get maybe 3 to 5 inches of snow, but it's going to be very, very windy, up to 50 miles an hour of gusty wind. So you see we're going to drop from 32 degrees roughly to 0 degrees, and it's going to feel a lot colder than that as we carry that into Friday, where we're going to have a low of about -3 degrees, but it's going to feel like -25 with those winds. Sustained winds out of the west, about 15 to 20 miles an hour, but the gusts, like we talked about before, 40 to 50 miles an hour is going to make it feel a lot colder. Saturday, pretty much the same thing. We're going to keep those strong winds out of the west. No more snow. Snow is going to end pretty much midnight Thursday night, but we're still going to keep those strong gusty winds. And since it's going to snow, we're going to have some whiteout conditions. So if you don't have to go anywhere and drive on the streets and roads, don't. Sunday, we're going to calm down just a little bit. Winds are going to calm down. We're going to have a peak of sunshine, highs about 10 degrees and -5 on the windshield. Monday, still cold, pretty much same thing as Sunday. But Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to have a pretty much return to normal. The winds are going to swing out of the south, so it's going to warm up a bit, getting back into the 30s, and that will feel a little better. Maybe a flurry late Tuesday night. But make sure you have everything you need for tonight and tomorrow morning, because right around the afternoon, somewhere between 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., weather temperature is going to drop, the winds are going to pick up, and the snow is going to begin. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, if you don't have to go out, don't. And make sure your neighbors are taking care of all your loved ones. So right now we're going to go into the sports. Tonight, the Bulls are in Atlanta. They're going to start in just about 15 minutes from now. So if you want to stay warm, watch the game. Getting into health and fitness, I guess you can guess what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about cold weather and hypothermia. What is hypothermia? That's when the body loses more heat than it can produce. What are some of the signs of hypothermia? Confusion, shivering, difficulty speaking, sleepiness, and stiff muscles. It can be really bad. And if you get hypothermia, what are some of the things we want you to do? One, if your clothes are wet, try to get to a warm place and get out of those wet clothes. Drink warm liquids and try, if you can, take a warm shower or a warm bath. Or if it's really extreme hypothermia, dial 911 for emergency services. So, and if you are out and about and you see anyone out in this cold weather, call 311 and try to get them to a warming or heating center, or dial 911, because these temperatures, they can be deadly. So don't take it for granted. Don't play around tomorrow, Friday and Saturday. Tomorrow, Friday and Saturday, don't take this cold for granted. It's nothing that you've really felt before. All right. Also, what I want you to do, if you do have to drive or go out, make sure your phone is fully charged. Make sure in your car you have a first aid kit, jumper cables, full gas tank, blankets and extra clothes, a shovel, a brush, the ice scraper, flashlight, some really good gloves, really thick, warm gloves, scarves, hats, and really thick clothing, and layer up. You Chicagoans know about that. Uh, Once again, extra clothes and blankets, and keep yourselves hydrated. Dehydration is bad in the wintertime also. You may not think about it, but keep bottles of water and some snacks in your car. And also remember 311, 911 if you're having an emergency. And one last thing to talk, or two last things. Go to weather.gov to get some tips on how to survive these next couple of days of extreme cold. And also, we'll go to gettingaroundillinois.com, gettingaroundillinois.com to know the latest road conditions. Now, I've talked a lot about the cold because it's going to be serious. And with that, Cena, I'm going to go back to you.
Thank you so much for the updates. Really appreciate it. So I guess we all have to be very careful. But I hope that you're not working tomorrow, right?
I'm supposed to work Friday, and the big condition there is I'm supposed to work on Friday. So we'll see how it goes. With those kind of wind conditions and blizzard conditions, there's a possibility I may not be going anywhere.
Right. Right. I mean, because I think it's general knowledge that with these types of extreme weather, planes are not supposed to fly, or are there exceptions?
Well, the big problem tomorrow or the next couple of days is going to be the visibility and whiteout conditions. Because we're only going to get probably 3 to 5 inches of snow, but with that wind gust, it's going to drop visibility to almost nothing, and that's the problem if you're out driving. If you go to zero visibility, can't see anything, you can't see the cars in front of you, and it might be a problem.
Awesome. Right. Okay. Well, that's a very great piece of information, Captain Mike. We really appreciate you. Please stay safe out there. We're looking forward to seeing you next week. Next week will be our last Wednesday for the year, and so we're looking to close it out. We hope that you can have more time with us, because we don't want you to come give your segment and go away. We want to have a party, all of us, just acknowledging the year and having a conversation. So just keep that in mind, Captain Mike. If you're available next week, Wednesday, we want to have you more.
It'll be back in the 30s and warmer. So, and the one thing I want you guys to do, please promise me, take care of each other. If you know anybody who needs help, if you have elderly people out there, call, stay in touch, get in contact. We'll take care of each other. That's all I need from you guys.
We got you, bro.
Yes.
All right. See you next week, God willing.
Bye, Captain Mike.
Thank you so much once again for that great piece of information. So we want to encourage everyone to be safe out there and check on loved ones and friends. But we're excited once again to be coming your way. Progressive Minds is where we build our community by engaging you and I in these very important conversations. This one is about our health as the holiday approaches, or actually it's not approaching, we're already in the holidays. Sure, what, Saturday or Sunday is Christmas, but anyway, I think the very important thing that we want to look at is, as we're going about shopping and making preparations of the meals we want to have, the parties and the fun things we want to engage in, we also have to be very, very careful about all these germs that are going around, and the stuff that we'll be eating and how they'll be affecting our health. And so this evening, we're privileged to have a very smart, she's not only smart, but she has a heart for people and a heart for community. So let's welcome our guest on the show this evening, Dr. BERTHA. But before that, I want to say that show is also run with my able co-host, Angie Mims. Angie, good evening. How are you doing today?
Good evening. I am eagerly anticipating hearing what Dr. BERTHA has to say, as I feel guilty about what I'll be cooking for Christmas. So I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Hoping you're better too.
Yes, I am getting better. As you can tell, my voice is better than yesterday, and so
yes,
yeah, definitely.
Well, that's good.
So I am grateful. And Dr. BERTHA, once again, you're welcome to the Progressive Mind Show.
Oh, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Bertha is an infectious disease consultant at the Essential Health West Fargo, which is in the US. She's also the president of Ghana Physicians and Surgeons Foundations of North America. Dr. Bertha wears a lot of hats. Now, I know this position that I just mentioned with regards to the Ghana physicians, she's stepping down for another person to come in. So maybe she'll tell us a little bit about that. Most importantly, Dr. Bertha, once again, we really appreciate your time to be on the show to share with us. Okay.
Welcome. My pleasure.
First of all, I know you are preparing for the weekend, the weather. I'm sure you read in the news and also probably heard from Captain Mike regarding what is coming, what the weather that is coming during this weekend.
Right, right.
Okay.
I'm hoping, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I've seen minus 20 degrees in last year in North Dakota, so I'm sort of ready for the cold. Bring it on.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Dr. Betha, can you tell us a little bit about uh, the Ghana the Ghana Physicians of North America, and how you were transitioning that position, and of course a little bit more about you.
Well, I'm originally from Ghana. I've been in the US for about 23 years, and I've been a doctor for 25 years. And during that time, I studied internal medicine. Internal medicine is the doctor for adults. So before you graduate as an internal medicine doctor, you need to know all the diseases about the whole human body from your head to toe. Recently, I was telling somebody that being a doctor, it's not easy. You just the word doctor encompasses so much. So let's take something as simple as your eye. Okay, I'm supposed to know everything about your eye. I'm supposed to know everything about how your eye works. I'm supposed to know everything about what happens when your eye has disease. Then I'm supposed to know all. So let's even take one eye disease like glaucoma. I have to know all the medicines used to treat glaucoma, every side effect, and the side effects of all the medications. So if you come to me and you say your eye hurts, after I diagnose it, I need to know all the drugs that can be used to treat it, their side effects, so I can check interactions with any medicine you're taking. So imagine duplicating this for every part of your body: your nail, your hair, your jaw, your teeth, your stomach, your heart, your intestines. You're supposed to know all these things before you pass as an internal medicine doctor. So after that, after knowing all that, then they decided there's a field called infectious diseases. So it's sort of a subsegment of internal medicine. What it means is that I have specialized in every possible infection that can affect a person, from fungus to tuberculosis to HIV. And then, based on my knowledge of internal medicine, if somebody has an infection or they are not sure if it's an infection, I should be able to distinguish between what is an infection and what is not. So somebody might say, why is an infectious disease doctor going to talk about heart disease? Before I even get into infectious disease training, I'm supposed to know everything about the heart, so that if somebody has a heart infection and they call me, I should be able to say, this is a heart infection, this is not a heart infection. So sometimes people wonder why infectious disease doctors are talking about other things besides infection. That's because it is considered a given that I know all those things already before I subspecialized. So that's a little about my work. But then as a doctor, I'm a Ghanaian. And so 20 years ago, President Kufuor started or institutionalized this or gave an executive order to form what we call the Ghana College of Physicians and Surgeons, so that when people finish medical school, instead of leaving to go abroad or going to seek further training, this college will be the one that would help them to subspecialize into surgery, internal medicine, etc. And because they needed people to teach them, one of the professors called Professor Nyami came to the US, talked to a few of his colleagues, including the founder of Focus Hospital, Professor Ohimba Boacheje, and they formed what is now known as the Ghana Physicians and Surgeons Foundation. So we exist because the college was formed, and our goal really was to be able to help them train the residents by providing our knowledge, expertise, etc. And so, interestingly, 20 years after that fact, we recently signed a memorandum of understanding with the Medical and Dental Council so that our members will find an easier route to be able to achieve that reality. So it's been my pleasure being part of that movement over
Okay.
the last year since I became president.
Awesome. And then I know you are transitioning right power to somebody else now, right?
Yes, it's in April, but I'm the one who's focusing on that. I should just enjoy the fact that and work at the fact that I'm the president for now. So let's focus on that because I'm just halfway through what I was, I became president in April. So I've really been president for 6 months, except I'm trying to get him to start thinking about it. So I keep reminding him.
No, I must say that you've done a lot, and I really want to congratulate you and honor you for the woman that you are, the woman that you are for our community, for Ghana, for Africa, of course for your family, and everything that you have stood for, and for pushing this agenda. Because I came to the event, I saw the work, and it's very commendable. So really want to congratulate you and I appreciate you for that.
Right. And thank you very much for saying that. And in fact, somebody may be listening just to encourage someone in my line of work and all throughout this life. There will still be people who would criticize you for one thing or another. Maybe they put you on a committee or you're supposed to do something and you're not measuring up.
Hmm.
God has taken me through a series of things where I have checked off my own boxes, and I've decided that, look, Bertha, you've done enough. You're a woman, you got married, you've got children, they're in college, you finished this and that. You're enough. You're successful. Don't worry about what anybody else thinks. Walk your own lane. Because as women, we tend to put ourselves down. No matter the accolades we achieve, we're always trying to measure up. And then these days we've been talking about mental health too. Like, it's very easy for you to feel crushed. Oh, I didn't do this enough, or I'm not enough. So I'm just encouraging someone out there that no matter where your journey is, like I've done it for myself. So I'm hoping your audience will do it for themselves too. Always tell yourself that, look, I'm enough. I'm perfect for whatever God designed for me to do. I'm doing it and I'm successful. So it's good to take criticism and take correction. But I refuse to put myself down at any one time because of anybody's expectations.
So obviously, you can tell she's not only a doctor, like I said in the beginning. She's very human, like us. She feels like us. Sometimes we see doctors as these robots. They are detached, and a lot of times, some doctors make you feel that way. That there's you and there is me. And but there's one thing I've always wondered about doctors. I've hardly seen or heard a doctor being sick and admitted and all of that. There must be there is definitely a secret that they have not told us or they're not telling us. Perhaps Dr. SERWA will share a little bit of that secret. But Angie, I know you've heard her speak a lot on some very important things. I'm sure you probably have some comments.
I do have comments. I have also questions, though, primarily because as the daughter of two older parents now, trying to figure out and navigate different ways to alter their diets. Is it true that what we eat can certainly heighten our risk for heart attacks and cardiac arrests and strokes and things of that nature? Is it true that, we barely can eat anything now, it seems like, without encountering these severe challenges? Is it true?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we are what we eat. In fact, this CNN presenter, Dr. Gupta, did a program many years ago where he found this village somewhere in Japan. I'm trying to remember where it was. They had no heart disease whatsoever. There are tests to find out whether your arteries are clogged and stuff like that. And that village was eating very healthy. And so they had no heart disease whatsoever, in terms of the fact that their arteries around their hearts was not clogged.
Wow.
And so, yes, you are what you eat. And sometimes when you change your diet, you can actually tell the difference. So
Mhm.
there are people who cut down the amount of carbohydrates they eat. Like
Mhm.
they cut back on rice and kenke and banku, all those heavy potatoes, and then they switch to vegetables and grains
Mhm.
um and when they do, they actually lose weight. People lose up to 20 pounds in maybe over a 6 month period. And
Mhm.
in fact, diabetes itself has been shown to be, I won't call it cured, but massively improved with just diet changes. We call it lifestyle modification, but changing your diet does make a huge difference. And maybe let me just give a biblical example. I don't know if you know this, but in the book of Daniel, Daniel and his friends were slaves and they went to a particular um, country, and the king was telling them that they should eat a particular meal because he was going to check their wisdom level. And Daniel and his friends refused to eat what was offered to them. They just said they wanted vegetables. So that's all they ate.
Mhm.
In 10 days, not only were they smarter, their faces looked brighter, you know?
Mhm.
So I think that your diet is extremely important. So people are focused on what they call the Mediterranean diet, made of
Mhm.
greens and olive oil. We just haven't studied the African diet, but the African diet is one of the most healthy diets you can find because it's a lot of, as Alinko will tell you, it's a lot of okra and contomere, lots of greens and healthy, real healthy. We don't eat, there's not too much excessive fat. Mostly we use dried fish and, lean meat to cook. And
Mhm.
so people use bush meat. It has very little fat on it. So yes, your diet really makes a difference. And in
Doc-
fact, if you're not sure about how diets actually influence, just try eating a lot of peanuts one day. The next day you find your face is filled with pimples. It's almost like direct correlation between what you ate and how you're looking.
Uh-huh.
Dr. Bertha, great points. And I really I'm happy that you shared. I'll just have a quick follow up. When you mentioned Banku and all of that, only the Ghanaians know about Banku. Our platform, our audience are a mixture of Africans and Caribbeans, African Americans, South Americans. So they don't know about Banku. Angie knows about Banku because she works. I mean, she has a lot of African friends and very she's very diverse
Right,
like that.
right.
But having said all of these, types of food that we eat in the African or the Ghanaian community, I'm sure there are other vegetables or food in the diaspora that you can highlight on.
Right. So when I meant, what I was just trying to generalize that it's good to reduce the amount of starchy, heavy foods you eat because
Mhm.
they're the ones that make you overweight.
Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you
So
should increase
what?
your amount of leafy vegetables. Eat
Right.
more okra. Eat more spinach. Eat
Mhm.
more parsley. When you go to the grocery store, head towards, if it's Walmart, go to your left and go and pick more, more of the
He
greens.
knows where to go. Go to your left.
What are some of the meats, the types of food that is very common in America that a lot of people eat that you can safely advise people, especially black people, to stay away from?
Oh, to stay away from. Well,
Mm,
the first is a lot of red meat that has a lot of fat on it.
mm.
Fatty foods. And I don't mean to, touch anybody's franchise, but a lot of fries and all the oil mixed with all the fries. Too much of it is not good for you because it just makes you overweight. And being overweight in itself is not the problem. It's the other things it causes. It increases your blood pressure and it increases your risk of developing diabetes. And when that happens, diabetes and high blood pressure in combination give rise to what we call heart disease. So let me just illustrate a little bit. I brought this model here just so you can see a human body, and I'll sort of break it down. So your heart is sort of tucked in here. And so when we say, sometimes we say, oh, eat healthy, what does it really mean? You want to eat so that the vessels around your heart don't get blocked. Okay, so this is your heart. You've eaten, it goes through your intestines, it's going to go through, be absorbed, through your
Yeah,
liver.
Dr. Becca, yeah, for the sake of the for our viewers, you might want to make it face us a little bit more.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay. So,
I love the visuals. We just want to be able to see what you're seeing. You already know. Just show it to us. No, don't.
okay, so I was just saying that when you eat food, just so you know that so when you eat, it's
Yeah.
going through what we call your esophagus, and
Right.
your heart is over here.
Mm-hmm.
But your this is actually your stomach. So let me try and put the stomach in place. We don't have to be exact, but this is your stomach. It grinds the food and it sends it to your intestines. Now, these intestines have blood vessels that will take whatever you've eaten and take it to your liver, which then circulates it around your body. So your heart, even though your heart is over here, you think it's not related to the food, because your stomach and all these things are absorbing it and circulating it around, your heart is going to get a share of it. Okay.
Mm.
So when we talk about heart disease, let me explain. So this is a model of the heart. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The heart is surrounded by all these blood vessels. It's been pumping since you were born. Okay. Now, when your heart's healthy, the blood. I'm going to show you something else. So this is something that cuts through the blood vessel.
Okay.
Just to let you see what it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you're healthy and you are eating well, your blood vessel is nice and round, and blood flows nicely through it like this.
Mm.
When you eat a lot of fatty foods, you start depositing this yellow thing called the plaque, and it gets advanced until, for a lot of people who are overweight, this is how their blood vessels look like. It's clogged.
Wow. Wow.
You see, it has very little opening.
Yeah.
So when they walk a little, they feel tired. Like now that the snow is coming a lot of people will be admitted with heart attacks because they have very little blood supply. So here's actually what happens. If you're healthy, it is small. When you're not healthy, your blood vessels look like this. They've got this thick plaque. So there's barely room for the blood to flow, okay? Right? So this is supposed to be the healthy. You see, it looks nice and it has a nice opening.
Right.
But when you overeat, you have no control of what's going on, but you're developing this big yellow things called the plaque.
Whoa.
So one day you will have a little tear in it for whatever reason, different reasons. Of course, the plaque makes the vessels get weak anyway. So the minute you have a little break in it, then a blood clot forms. These are what we call platelets. It's called a clot or an embolus or a thrombus. When it forms in there, because this heart muscle needs to be healthy, and suddenly you've blocked it, then you develop what is called a heart attack. Okay, so this muscle, which should be nice and pink, will start changing color, and then some people say I have chest pain. So that chest pain is because you've been eating so much food that has fat. Let me just go back to the little model. So you've been eating a lot of food with fats. It goes to your liver, it circulates around. Your blood is filled with all these big chunks of fat. They settle in the vessels around the heart, and then over time you develop what we call coronary artery disease. So with very little induction or motivation, you or you exert yourself just a little bit, or maybe a little bit of injury to the vessels, you develop what is called a heart attack. So a heart attack really is that situation where the blood supply to a particular part of your heart is just stopped because this clot has formed, and it only formed because there was all this plaque. So you realize that children rarely get heart attacks because when you're born, Everybody is born with this nice round one, and then we eat our way literally to heart disease over here.
Mm. Is it likely that kids? I mean, you said. I mean, thanks for sharing. These are
I'm,
very powerful.
I'm not generalizing though that children can get heart attacks with certain conditions, but in general, if you cut through the blood vessel of a child, you would rarely find this plaque. Although research has shown that this thing actually starts developing right from where you're born. So all those little kids who are fat and walking around, I'm sure some of them have started to develop this. Like it doesn't develop when you're 40 or 50.
Mm.
It starts when you're a child. So you have to start being conscious of what you eat right from your childhood.
Wow.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, yes, I concur wholeheartedly that your demonstration, like, I've not seen it. So I'm very appreciative of you having those props to visibly show the listening audience and myself what it actually looks like. However, would I be wrong in saying that it is our mentality and perhaps our culture that has led us to not take this as seriously as we should?
Not really. Knowledge is power. It's true that in the African culture, a lot of the time, at least when I was growing up, it was kind of cute. As a woman, um, we assumed mentally that men will like you when you're fat and round. So there are a lot of women. These days, it has changed. There were a lot of women who actually went out of their way to take medications like I forget the name of some of them, but they went out of their way to take medications to actually put on weight. And just in the last month, I had a young girl reach out to me that her friends are teasing her that she's too skinny. So she wants to take this medicine to put on weight. I mean, of course, I advised her against it, but that's the only role that our culture plays. Where mentally you feel you look more beautiful when you're fat, when really you're actually making your body sick. So I don't think it's just our culture per se. I think a lot of people, if you explain to them that overeating can give you heart attack and heart disease, they would quickly change their lifestyle.
Well, so that's actually what I was alluding to, was just how much we eat and the types of foods that we eat here in America versus African culture. But before I go to that, I've known some of my African friends who have unfortunately had heart attacks and have been diagnosed with gout. Igbo people, they are. And so, going back to my point though, is it in our culture, or would you say that it is in different Black and brown people's cultures to indulge in foods that are sometimes fat driven?
Well, but I want to tell you this. I don't want you to, let your audience believe that for some reason, maybe Black people have more heart disease. I don't think so. Not at all. In fact,
That's good to know.
if
That's
you
good to
take
know.
most of I can take our grandparents growing up. They grew up in the village. They ate a lot of greens. They did a lot of walking to go to their farms. Almost none of them had heart disease. I mean, it was almost unheard of for anybody to get a heart attack because they were walking to their farms. They did a lot of physical activity. We have become sedentary, meaning we sit in cars, we
Yes.
don't walk.
Yes.
We come home, and because we're maybe a little affluent, we eat big meals and then we sit some more. And so our modern society has become a bit sedentary, but I won't say that Black people have more heart disease. However, this is what I can say. Based on biases in providing care, it has been consistently shown over and over again that Black people have worse outcomes when they develop heart disease because when they go to the hospital, unbeknownst to a lot of people, they just treat them differently. It's been shown when it comes to heart failure, even just somebody has a heart attack, the chances that they will get what is called a bypass surgery meaning they'll quickly take them to surgery and go. So a bypass literally means that you go past this blockage, you find a way of bypassing it so that the blood will flow. So it's a procedure called coronary artery bypass graft. They've shown that Black people are less likely to be offered that option. Even when they have heart failure, they are less likely to be referred to a cardiologist. So that is where the bias comes in. But I can't say that for sure. Black people have more heart disease. But then another way that it might play in is that, in general, African Americans and Black people in the US have a lower socioeconomic status. And it's been shown that people who are a bit more affluent are more likely to have the knowledge about heart disease. They're more likely to go to the gym. And for Black women in particular, sometimes because of our hair alone, that Shinene just went and got her hair done. She doesn't want it to get wet, so she won't go to the gym, you know?
Right.
So it's been proven that sometimes those cultural things, you know, you don't want it, you just had it sprayed and splits and you spend 2 hours at the beauty shop. You don't want to go and, you know, go and exercise, which is why my hair is natural and I'm promoting natural hair. Anyway, so those are some of the things that we get sedentary. We just sit. And sometimes the less money people have, the more likely they are to eat, you know, junk food and pick up just McDonald's and live on those foods which are not heart healthy. But I don't think that Black people have more heart disease in general. What we do have intrinsically is a higher incidence of high blood pressure or hypertension. That has been studied way back from Accra, from all the African professors to here. We don't know if it's, you know, all the slave trade that has to do with stress or whatever, but Black people tend to have a higher incidence of hypertension.
Okay, so that said, we will probably talk a bit about high blood pressure. Before that, we want to acknowledge viewers who have joined us. Is 6:49 p.m. Central. You are watching the Progressive Mind Show. This evening, our topic is your health and the holidays. Very, very important. We are particularly looking at heart attacks, heart diseases. We'll be talking a little bit about liver diseases as well. The doctor has transitioned into BP. So when we after the break, we'll talk about BP. If you are on Facebook and YouTube, we encourage that you share the feed so we can all educate ourselves and be part of the community building agenda. We will take this short break. When we come back, the show will continue. Again, you're watching the Progressive Mind Show, hosted by Alinko and Angie Mims. We shall be right back after this short break.
Aglo Bolingbrook Lighthouse is a network of caring women. We are a dynamic global movement with a single mission to see God's purpose fulfilled on earth as it is in heaven. Our mandate is every nation touched and every heart changed for God. We invite you to our prayer meeting every Saturday and breakfast meeting held every last Saturday of the month from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. via Zoom meeting. For more information, please contact Dickness Rebecca Modi at 630-297-1471 or Reverend George Ofe Ado, our advisor, at 630-414-9505. We look forward to having a refreshing time with you in the Lord. Thank you and stay blessed. In my heart.
Welcome back to the show. We'll go straight to Dr. BERTHA Ayi to keep educating us on issues about our hearts, liver, BP now. Such important information you've shared so far, Dr. Bertha IE, and we really want to continue with knowing more about what causes heart attacks. We will let you talk about BP, but I want to talk, if you can spend a little bit, maybe a minute or two, on the major causes of heart attacks that I know you've spoken extensively about it, but if you can maybe prioritize it, pinpoint it 1 to 3, the major ones that people should be on the lookout for.
Okay, so I'm going to illustrate with the heart, and I just want you to, when we tend to just say heart disease, but I want to show you the parts of the heart, and then I'll hone in on heart attack, because a lot of people think when you say heart attack or heart disease, it means heart attack. So this is your heart, okay? I'm gonna do 2 things. So this is your heart inside your body, and inside here, it's almost like take 2 gloves. It's almost like the heart is sitting inside 2 gloves, or what we call pericardium, inside the body. So it's not, the heart is not just sitting there. So this heart is surrounded by what we call pericardial membrane. You don't have to remember its name. Just know that it's sitting in 2 sacs. Then you have the muscles that make up the heart. You have heart valves. You have the big vessels that come out of it. So when we say heart disease, and then we have these things that separate the heart, the 4 chambers of the heart. So when we say heart disease, a lot of people just think heart disease is heart attack. So heart disease is 1, high blood pressure. It involves the diseases of the muscle, which is where the heart attack comes in. There are people who have valve diseases, which happens when people grow older. And then we even have diseases where I'm sure you've heard somebody has a hole in heart. It means that these chambers that are supposed to separate the heart into 4 chambers, they didn't quite form well in childhood. So they have a connection between there and there. So all those things, and then with COVID and certain viruses, the 2 gloves that I said the heart muscle is sitting in, it can get infected or inflamed. And so people can form a big bag of infected fluid around the heart. So all those things make up heart disease. So I just want to clarify that, because people think, oh, I'm heart healthy, but there are so many components of what makes up the heart. So I want you to understand that. So now you talked about heart attack in particular.
Yes.
So let me talk about that.
Now, before you go on, does the picture on the screen help your illustration at all?
Yeah, it helps it somewhat, because it shows you that the heart is a big muscle, which is supplied by blood vessels. So the blue and red around it, they are the things that are taking blood to the heart. So a heart attack just means that the blood that is supposed to get to the heart muscle has stopped. And so the heart muscle is starting to die off. And that dying off causes pain. So that's why we say when we have chest pain, you should call 911. The pain is that the heart muscle is dying. And why is this important? The heart is the one that's beating all the time, sending blood around your body, to your brain, to all the rest of you. So if it's attacked and it stops pumping, then you're about to die, right? It stops pumping, so your body does not get oxygen. And so some people can have a massive heart attack. So like all this tissue, all the stuff that you're showing on the screen can die, because it was a big, like, let me just go back to some of the principles. So there's a big block. This thrombus has blocked the blood supply. So if it's one of these if it's one of these big vessels supplying the heart, then you get a massive heart attack, and those people would die on the spot. Others have to be rushed to the hospital so that they're either given medication or surgery that would unclog that part of the heart.
Right.
So essentially, that's what a heart attack means. So now I can talk about the things that increase your risk of heart attack.
There you go.
The first one is what your co-presenter mentioned, diet. Angie mentioned, if you eat a lot of fatty foods, you are putting all the fat inside your vessels. So you are setting the stage for a heart attack, right? So that's making sure your cholesterol and you're not eating more fruits. Ideally, we should eat about 2 cups of fruits a day. And you should also eat a lot of greens, food with greens in it. So that the first one is your diet. Then there's this other factor called the blood pressure. So what is blood pressure? Blood pressure is when these vessels, instead of being elastic and being able to pump, when the heart pumps the blood, instead of relaxing nicely, they've gotten stiff over time. And for some reason, like I said, Black people have a lot of high blood pressure. In fact, in a place like Ghana and in most places, about 57% of the adult population have high blood pressure. And one, they don't know it. And two, sometimes when they know it, they are placed on medication to relax these things so that the blood pressure goes down. After some people take it for a month, they think it's like curing a wound. As soon as the blood pressure goes down, they say, oh, my blood pressure is down, so I don't have to take the medicine anymore. Forgetting that it is a lifelong condition that you have to treat. So if there's something I want people to take away, it's not so much even diet. I mean, I want you to eat well. But the biggest epidemic for people of color and even all over the world is untreated hypertension. People have high blood pressure and they don't know it. So what I want people to know is, tell yourself, I need to know my number. What is my number? And that number should be your blood pressure levels. Ideally, it should be below 120/80. If it's above that consistently, you need to be taking blood pressure medications. Some people walk around with really high blood pressure. They don't even know it. And the next thing you know, oh, he's passed away. They said he got a stroke or he got a heart attack. And the truth of the matter is they've been walking around with very high levels of hypertension. So hypertension just means the pressure inside those vessels is way too high. So that's one big modifiable. So it's not just 3. I'm going to tell you. So diet, blood pressure, glucose, diabetes.
Before you go to glucose, I just want to thank you so much for sharing what you've shared so far. I want you to lay more emphasis on blood pressure. So blood pressure simply means that, from a layman's term, the blood that is flowing in your vessels are pumping extra blood in the vessels and is causing pressure.
Okay, so let me illustrate. It's kind of confusing because the local languages that we use for high blood pressure, it makes people think your blood is too much.
There you go. Yep.
So this heart is going to pump blood like you were born and it's pumping blood nicely, okay?
Right.
Now, when it pumps into this, let's assume it pumps out into this vessel here, okay? I'm just trying to join them.
Right.
So this is creating the pressure, the original pressure, and it has to create pressure because the blood has to go to every part of your body so you'll be healthy. Now, when it pushes it through this whole vessel is made up of like elastic fiber, so it will expand to take the pressure.
There you go.
Now, over time, as you grow old, these walls become stiff, either because of all the plaque. A lot of people too smoking. I'm going to mention smoking. Smoking hardens the vessels. It makes it hard. So when the heart pumps, instead of meeting a nice relaxed tube, it meets a stiff tube. So if a tube is stiff, the pressure that is building inside of those vessels will be high, right? So it is the stiffness. So maybe there's another word I want everybody to take from the stiffness of these things.
The vessels.
That's what actually creates the pressure. Because when you're measuring blood pressure, you're actually measuring the amount of pressure inside the blood vessels. So the heart is going to continue pumping, but you will notice that people who have high blood pressure, when they die and they section through their hearts, this heart has been pumping against so much pressure that instead of maybe being this small, it's become thick, and we call it hypertrophic, hypertrophied heart. The heart is overworking to overcome that pressure.
Right.
So it is the stiffness of those vessels that give rise to high blood pressure. So that's what I'm saying, that in Black people, for some reason, which scientists have not figured out, whether we live in Accra, Ghana, Ibadan, Nigeria, or Chicago, or in Kenya, they have found that Black people just have high levels of blood pressure. Now, as a scientist, at some point I thought, why can't we say it's normal? Maybe it's our new normal, just like we have black skin. But then, no, if it was normal, it shouldn't cause increased disease. But it's been found it's not normal. And so because of that, it translates into strokes and high blood pressure. And then heart disease. So, and then kidney disease. So high blood pressure. So when I'm not digressing, we're still talking about all these things. But if your pressure is high, here's what happens. Because the pressure is high, it keeps hitting these vessels. It starts affecting your brain. And high blood pressure and diabetes together are the most common causes of kidney failure. There's so many people on dialysis, especially Black people, because they forget that a lot of people don't even know that high blood pressure will lead to dialysis or kidney failure. So as the pressure keeps beating on your heart, it beats. Let me take this out so you see. These are your kidneys. It beats on the kidneys. It's beating on your brain. So after a while, people with high blood pressure will develop stroke. They develop kidney failure because the pressure has been hitting for years. So if you have high blood pressure, even if it's 140/80, you need to be on some medication to bring it down. The other thing that can decrease high blood pressure is just exercise. It's been shown that just 30 minutes of even brisk walking every day without medication can reduce the high blood pressure. But a lot of us like to be round and fat, and we got our hair done. In fact, some people barely exercise, but you don't even have to go to the gym. You can exercise at home every day on your own. Just find something that you can do. Just maybe buy 2 dumbbells. When I say dumbbells, those 2 maybe 5-pound weights, and just lift it about 5 minutes a day. Just do that. Just something to keep your body going. And you can do squats yourself. You can do push-ups on your own. You don't need to pay any money to do those things. And all those little things can reduce your blood pressure. So I'm not moving away from the heart attack. We talked about diet. We talked about blood pressure. And I talked about exercise.
Right.
The other one is smoking. Smoking makes these vessels hard. People who smoke, they're more likely to have stroke. They have likely to have cancer. They're more likely to have dialysis. They're more likely to even the arteries down to their feet get so stiff. You find a lot of people in a wheelchair, their legs have been cut off. They've been smoking for over 20 years and they will not stop.
And if you say smoking, are there differences in the smoke? Some do cigarettes, some do
cigars,
some do weed. So any type of smoke is smoke.
Okay, so smoking, I'm talking about nicotine.
Okay.
Weed is in a different class by itself. It's not been shown to cause heart disease. I mean, and weed became more of an issue like recently, but I'm talking about age-old nicotine smoking. Okay. It's almost, I call it the poison of the cells. It's almost like waking up every day and shooting your own cells to death because you're giving them cancer. You cause the cells to transform into cancer. You cause the cells to secrete things that will make your vessels hard and give you high blood pressure. So I strongly encourage people to stop smoking.
Would
So we
would you?
talk about blood pressure, diet, exercise, smoking,
Yeah.
and also glucose, diabetes.
Yeah.
Diabetes is another major issue for a lot of Black people,
Mm.
but I suppose your audience is not just Black people. Anybody with elevated blood glucose or diabetes, it is that's what transforms into the plaque. So high levels of glucose is also a big risk factor for heart disease.
Wow, that's a lot, Angie.
So I've been recently diagnosed with blood pressure, high blood pressure, and have been subscribed um, my medicine. And so I was listening to you become quite laborious and how serious this is, and I didn't really realize it because, like you said, I was going and going and going, you know. And so now that I've been on this medicine, it has helped some. But my question is that I think you even mentioned that, you know, this is what it is. Like, you have to accept it. That's how I look at it now. Like, I have been now stamped with an incurable disease, you know, but I've also heard of naturalists and herbalists who say you don't have to continue to take these pills if you subscribe to this diet and change your mindset and the food intake. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, so it's not as though when you switch the mindset, it will reduce the high blood pressure itself, but it's switching the mindset to telling yourself, I've got this. I can do something about it. I
Mm.
can exercise my way to health. I'm going to lose 10 pounds or I'm going to lose 15% of my body weight. So it is that mindset of I can do this. And part of the mindset is also being aware of the what we call the end organ damage. A lot of people don't know that the high blood pressure, when it's sustained, is going to lead to kidney failure. So there are people who are diagnosed with kidney failure and they're wondering, how did I get this? It means nobody has told them that all these years that sustained blood pressure can lead to kidney failure, or somebody develops a stroke. They don't know that. So I think knowledge is power. When you understand that, wow, high blood pressure is not just high blood pressure in itself, it means that if I don't control it, the reason why doctors are concerned is not the high blood pressure in itself. Because if the high blood pressure doesn't do anything, nobody cares, right? It's high, let it be high, right?
Mm.
The issue is that because it's high, it's sort of like if you ever go to a cliff or a river fall where the rocks, the water is hitting on the rocks. It's almost as though high blood pressure means let the water be your blood and let your tissues be the rocks.
Mm.
The blood is constantly hitting on those rocks every day until one day it progressively develops kidney failure,
Mm.
or the person develops a stroke, or they develop heart failure. And they're all reversible. The minute you're told you have high blood pressure, the mindset should be, I'm not going to let this thing get me.
Yes.
No, it can get me. It can. So think of your whole body. You know, the minute they tell you have blood pressure, don't imagine something somewhere. Tell yourself, oh, so there's going to be pressure in my brain,
Mm.
pressure in my heart, pressure in my liver. There's going to be pressure everywhere, even my feet. I could lose my feet because I have high blood pressure.
Mm.
So that is the mindset change that needs to happen.
You're right. Because I'm now determined to figure out different ways for myself, along with my other family members who have, it runs on both sides. So I'm
Right,
glad to hear about
right,
you
right. And the
telling
reason,
us how serious this is through illustration.
right, and the simplest costs nothing. You can decide that, look, this household, especially women, have so much power because we're the ones who put food on the table. You can decide that, look, we're gonna cut down all the pork and the big fatty things. I am putting vegetables on the table. It's gonna be greens and um vegetables. So you can control the diets that people are going to take in, right?
So what foods would you subscribe in
There you go.
place of,
Yeah.
the beef and the, fatty foods.
Chicken, turkey.
You don't have to replace it per se. Just add a lot more greens. Just
Okay.
add a lot more vegetables.
Okay. So you
Okay.
so you can have your turkey, your chicken, but a lot more of say broccoli, kale, spinach.
It's,
Right. I mean, of course, don't eat 2 pounds of beef at a sitting. Don't eat 2 pounds of beef at a sitting and then just add more kale. And I mean, you should limit how much of the these fatty things, fatty foods you're eating. But what I'm saying is make a conscious effort to decide. I mean, maybe the simplest way that I've heard it explained is let your food be colorful.
yes.
Because if you think about it, all the starchy foods have one color. Rice is white, potatoes are cream. You eat
Mhm.
lots and lots of it and fill up. But let your food be colorful. Buy green peppers, buy some kale, buy red peppers. Let your food be full of these healthy, pigmented foods that can go into your body and actually act as antioxidants and sometimes even melt some of all those plaques away.
Mm,
A
mm,
lot more green. So it's not so much don't eat one thing, but it's more of what should I include in my diet? And they're actually not even expensive. Eating bananas is not expensive when you're going to work. Instead of buying a McDonald's on the way, make sure you've over the weekend you've gone to buy more grapes and oranges and cuties and then fill up a sandwich bag. So when you're hungry, instead of grabbing a burger filled with um, oozing out with lots of oil and hard disease,
Great. Yeah.
you just eat your grapes and healthy stuff that would keep your body healthy and actually help you lose weight. So back to you, Angie. If you've been diagnosed with hypertension, you have so much power in your hands to change things. What you choose to eat and how you even choose to exercise every day. It's not a whole lot. Just start with 5 minutes a day. That I'm going to be even standing in front of my mirror and jump up and down for 5 minutes. You've done some activity.
awesome.
Maybe increase it to 7 minutes.
Awesome.
Do one push up.
Awesome.
Then the next day you do two push ups. Just something to keep your heart going, even in the winter. You know. So those are some very simple things you can do to take charge. It's not just the pill.
Mm, mm.
Right. I believe that. I
Well,
believe.
thank you so much for sharing so far, Dr. I. We
Thank you.
really appreciate the information.
Mhm.
I think that is also, we would also like to know a bit more about diabetes. Um, Now, I grew most of my life was spent in Ghana, Africa, and I hardly would hear anybody talk about, oh, I have diabetes or it runs in my family. But when I came to America, it was like it's like common language, and it seemed like everybody's. It's like society has accepted it. Oh, we have diabetes. Oh, I'm diabetic, and I hear it all the time. So, but I'm probably it's also a thing now in Ghana. You work in this region and in Ghana as well, Dr. Ai. So you can help us understand if it's a prevalent issue in Ghana right now.
Right, right. And give
What
me a
are,
moment. I want to show you something. I'll go off camera for one moment. One
Mhm.
moment.
Okay, all right. So while she's trying to show us something, we would probably take a look at. Yeah, when I saw this, Angie, to be honest, I wanted to have Dr. Ayer speak more on these images, how the heart, how with the skeleton, of course, the skeleton, but how the organs in the skeleton, I mean, our body controls and affects our body in the long run. This is the only thing we have to be able to achieve everything that we want to achieve in life. And so to keep this strong and functioning well so we can become who we want to be, enjoy the life we want to enjoy, go to the vacations we want to have, there are things in this body that we need to take care of.
Yes.
And these things are very fragile, they're vital, even though they are very resistant
Mhm.
because we've caused a lot of damage to them, but they have been able to withstand it up until now. But you always have to see your body like this, and you always have to see it as these organs in it that helps this skeleton you see here move. So how do you keep the engine? How do you keep the organs in this body healthy so that you can become the person that you are and enjoy the things that you want to enjoy in life? It's just my own illustration of how I want to see the human anatomy or the human body. But Dr. Ayi can give us a more expertly narration, so to speak. Dr. Ayi, you wanted to show us something. We're ready to see it.
Right. So here is the human body once again. I want to put diabetes in context. So there's an organ that sort of sits, it sits behind your body, just sort of on top of your kidneys and around your stomach. It's called the pancreas. And so if this is your stomach, when you eat, the food goes this way and goes through your intestine. This is what we call the duodenum. Now, nestled between the duodenum and your back, really. So sitting in here where I'm pointing to is this organ called the pancreas, okay?
Okay.
So is this yellow structure.
All right. It's sitting in the back, right?
It's sitting in the back. So it's behind. So
there you go.
When you're standing upright, your stomach is here.
Okay, nice.
So behind your stomach is this organ called the pancreas. Now, your pancreas secretes something called insulin. And what insulin does is, when you eat, I talked about the food going through your intestines into your liver. And then your liver, we call it, metabolizes it. It processes. So let's say, let's get real. You've eaten a Big Mac, my McDonald's. You've got bread in it. It's got a big 2 inches of beef. You've got onions, tomatoes. You're full, and then you just go to sleep because the food just pretty much knocked you out. So what happens to the food? These intestines are going to try and chew it up, and then they'll send it to the liver to process it. And then the liver is going to take out all the fats, spread it around the body, take out the beef, break it up, and distribute it. Now, what it does is that it's responding to this insulin that is produced by the pancreas. And what the insulin does is to keep your body's glucose within a certain level. So in medicine, we call something homeostasis. Homeostasis is just the whole concept that everything is kept within a certain level. That is why when you walk for a while, you get thirsty. You're thirsty because the body is operating in homeostasis. It immediately feels that you don't have enough water, so you're going to feel thirsty, right? So all these things are in place to keep your body with it. So the pancreas is releasing insulin to keep your body's glucose below 126 milligrams per DL. Don't worry about the figures, but it's keeping it within a certain level. Now, in those who have diabetes, now pay attention. So those who have diabetes, 2 things happen. Some people are born with a disease of the pancreas itself. That happens in children. We call it autoimmune disease, where their body begins to work against the pancreas, so they don't have enough insulin. Those kids will have brittle diabetes. It means they don't have any insulin. So when they eat, the glucose is just out of control. Nothing is going to tell the liver that don't put too much glucose in the body. So they have high levels of glucose. Then there are those who over time, some of them genetically, diabetes runs in the family. The pancreas just does not produce enough insulin. Then there comes the issue of overweight. Some people too are so overweight that even though they're producing enough insulin, the insulin is just not working. When it gets to the sites in the body where it's supposed to work, they say, hey, we're fat and lazy. We can't respond to insulin, right? So those are all mechanisms. But the bottom line is diabetes just means that there's too much insulin floating around the body. And when there's too much insulin floating around the body, it increases the chances of forming these yellow plaques. So people with diabetes are more likely to develop a stroke. They're more likely to develop heart attack. they're more likely to lose their feet because there's been too much insulin in the body for a long time.
Mm.
And it's not like maybe you didn't hear about diabetes when you were in Ghana or Nigeria, wherever you grew up,
Mm.
for one simple reason.
Mhm.
We don't do enough public education. And because we don't have enough doctors, the doctors don't have time to talk about it. But then you come to the US where knowledge has abounded. So you go to the hospital, you keep hearing diabetes on television. You go to the doctor's office, they're screening for diabetes. So it seems as if there's more diabetes here. No, it's the same. You
It,
know,
it also means that there are people working. Sorry, I didn't want to interject, but it also means that there are so many people working around Africa who may have not been diagnosed as diabetic.
boy,
Are right?
8% of Ghanaian population has diabetes.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah,
Did you say 80?
8%.
Oh, 8%. Okay. I thought you
I
said
mean, it is very common. I mean, maybe because I work as a doctor, I get to see the diabetic patients.
Mm.
So growing up, if you remember, if you had an old lady in your house who had a non-healing wound,
Mm-hmm.
they'll say, "Oh, she's a witch. She's got a wound on her leg. She
Yeah.
probably just had diabetes, and she just needed somebody to diagnose it. And once the glucose was controlled, her wound would heal." But then
What is the correlation, though? That you just said that, but what is the correlation between you being diabetic and your wound not healing?
okay, it's very simple. So this is your body. Imagine your feet is supposed to have good blood supply,
Yeah.
but the vessels that are supplying your feet have all these thick things in them. So you've developed what we call peripheral vascular disease.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one, you don't have enough blood getting to your feet. And secondly, people who have diabetes, the glucose, the high levels of glucose pretty much kills the nerves.
Mm.
So we call it peripheral neuropathy. They don't have sensation. They've lost sensation to their feet. So one, they are more likely to get injured because they've lost that protective power of pain.
Mm.
So they get a cut, they don't feel it. And because there's poor blood supply, they get a wound and it never heals because there's not enough oxygen and nutrients coming to the area to allow the wound to heal. So, in fact, the major problem diabetics have is diabetic. We call it the diabetic foot. They're either getting an ulcer or their feet are hurting or they've lost. In fact, most people you meet today who've lost their feet, you can almost predict that they have some component of diabetes and their legs got cut off.
Wow. Wow.
wow.
Thank you again, Dr. Bertha Ayi. This is so much important information.
It really is.
We'll be having you here repeatedly, to be honest, to educate us. You're watching the Progressive Mind Show. We're here every Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central. God willing, next year we'll be switching our day from Wednesday to Tuesdays. The time doesn't change. It's still going to be 6 to 8 p.m. We'll be bringing you very important conversations such as this. We encourage that you join the movement in building our communities, our societies, and making them a better place. We do these through dialogue. Okay, this type of dialogue and also curate very important community events to augment our conversations because we like to walk our talk. And so you'll be seeing events coming up next year which are produced by the Progressive Mind Show. We are 501c3. If you're watching us now, please be encouraged to go on our website to donate to us so we can improve on our services and bring you these very important shows. We are thankful that Dr. Ayi is a very benevolent person, so she's not charging to be on this show. But in order to get experts like this, some demand some type of fee. And of course, we're not able to afford that. And so help us make our communities great. I'm very excited that we're going to be continuing next year's journey with Angie, who is bringing a lot to the Progressive Mind Show. So Dr. Ayi, thank you so much so far. Again, share the feed on Facebook and on YouTube if you're watching us. My name is Alinko, and I'm joined with Angie. For the few minutes that we're going to try and wrap up, Dr. Ayi, I know has to run. I want her to touch a little bit on the liver, the causes of liver diseases. But Dr. Ayi, before you do so, I've always wondered as a child, what causes the heart to beat? It's like an automatic thing. It just beats on its own. Everything else in the body, something makes it, I feel like the heart controls a lot because it beats and everything is running, the blood is flowing. But what makes the heart does this, like this beat right here?
Right.
What is that?
So it's actually electrical signal. So that's why, the Muslims will say Allahu Akbar, God is great.
Mm,
And,
mm,
Christians also believe in God. And the Bible actually says it's only a fool who says in his heart there's no God,
Yes.
I mean, there has to be a God. There must be a God somewhere.
Yes.
So scientists over time have learned to measure the electrical signal. That's why when you go to the hospital, they might say they are going to do an electrocardiogram, meaning they're going to measure the electrical signals that are passing through your body. And maybe the simplest way people would understand it these days with all our cell phones is to think of the fact that when your battery is dying and you plug it to a source, immediately the battery gives you a little kick and it starts charging, and it goes from 0 to 10% to finally it's fully charged. So the heart muscles are controlled by electrical signals, and there's a part of the heart called the sinoatrial nodes. They're somewhere in here. It's not in this illustration, but inside the heart somewhere, there's a center where all these electrical signals pass through the muscle and they cause it to contract. So you can actually measure it. And so when if you've ever watched a movie where somebody's dying, those waves just get flat. We call it a systole, and it means the person is dead. But
how about the EKG? What's EKG?
So EKG is E for electro. K is Americans who call it K, but in Britain it's C because it's cardio, electrocardiogram. But you see, when you speak German, the cardio is spelled with a K. So maybe that's why Americans who are predominantly from Europe, maybe that's why they put the K. I mean, I'm just figuring it out as I speak to you because in Britain it's actually EKG. Electrocardio represents the C, and gram is just the fact that you're measuring something on a graph. So EKG is electrocardiogram. It's the process of measuring the electrical signals from the heart. And it's important since we're talking about heart disease. It's one of the main means of checking if somebody's heart has had a heart attack before, or they're currently having a heart attack. There's some changes that happen on the EKG that lets you know that somebody has a heart attack. So your question was, what makes the heart beat? Yes, is those signals from the sinoatrial nodes that get spread through the heart muscle, literally, and then it causes it to contract. Then the signals change, and this muscle will beat every single day of your living life until the day you give up the ghost and you die, and it becomes a flat curve. So talking about heart disease too, we have to remember that I mentioned the lining around the heart. I mentioned the vessels supplying the heart. Even the heart rhythm can also develop disease. It can become irregular. There's those who have atrial fibrillation where the heart is just gone crazy and is beating like this. So when you measure the EKG, instead of a nice looking curve, you have waves all over. And then when somebody's going to die, it's also an irregular heartbeat that makes the person die. People who die go into what we call ventricular fibrillation, where the heart just there's no coordination whatsoever. Everything just, how you show the heart again.
Okay.
The way it's beating nicely, one at a time. When somebody's going to die, they develop fibrillation. So there's no coordination. So there's no blood supply to the body because nothing is coming in or leaving. And so that person will die. And that's the role of, if you've seen those things that they use to shock the heart, they put it in the airports.
Yes.
They're supposed to shock the rhythm back to normal. So if somebody passes out and they check and there's no pulse, and they do the EKG and they think is ventricular fibrillation, they apply those things to the heart, and it shocks it sort of tells the heart to get back into rhythm. And so hopefully you'll be able to save some lives that way. So I hope that answers your question, that it's all electrical signals going through the heart,
Awesome.
causing the heart to beat. And when it becomes abnormal, medicine science also uses electrical signals to tell them to straighten up.
That's powerful. Now, within the next few minutes, just give us a brief breakdown on what the liver. I mean, you actually mentioned the functionality, some of the functionalities of the liver, but what causes liver diseases and how can we check them briefly so we can wrap up?
So the liver is sitting right here underneath the lungs and the heart. But it is separated from all these organs with your diaphragm. We have a little, I'll show it to you in a moment.
And I know Angie has some questions, so Angie, you can have your follow-up questions.
Yeah.
While we try to wrap up.
Questions.
Joshua says that while we waiting on, I wanted to read that comment earlier, but I think let's see here if we can get. Okay, here we go. This is informative, but also hurts my feelings about McDonald's.
Okay, so this liver sits right here underneath the diaphragm, under your lungs. And what happens is when you eat, it doesn't go to it directly, but the stomach and intestines would process everything, and then they'll go through. In fact, so let me show you. So when you eat, all these vessels around the stomach, you see the red things, they take the blood and then they carry it to the liver.
Okay.
So the liver is like the poison center of the body and also the processing center of the body. So let's take it that is the factory in the body. The liver then determines, okay, proteins, you go to muscles. This one is glucose. I want to send it to the brain. If you've eaten something poisonous, is the one that will break it down. And in fact, it generates all the things that make your urine look yellow and your stools look brown, because the liver is the breakdown of all these things. So what causes liver disease? In America, the most common one is alcohol. Alcohol kills the liver cells, period. And over a long period of time, over a 10-year period, the liver goes through these changes called fibrosis until it's as hard as a rock. And so the end of all liver diseases is what we call cirrhosis of the liver. Now, there are viruses called the hepatitis viruses. Now, hepatitis, I think, is either the Latin or Greek word for liver. So if we say hepatitis, it's a virus that decides that I am in the body, I don't want anything, I want the liver. So these viruses, hepatitis B and C, which mostly people get from injection drug use. In Africa, hepatitis B is the most common cause of liver cancer. So these viruses go to attack the liver, they make it sick, and over time it develops this hard, shrunken liver called cirrhosis. And when cirrhosis persists for a long time, it becomes liver cancer. So whenever you hear somebody dying from liver cancer, maybe they were drinking lots of alcohol or they had hepatitis A or B. Now, these days, there's another major cause of cirrhosis of the liver. It's just being overweight and being fat. They've noticed that when you're overweight, when you do the CAT scan of your abdomen, let's say you went for something else, but then they do a CT scan of your liver, they find these little tiny fat lobules inside the liver. They call it non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. It means the liver is filled, instead of being brown and uniform like this, now it's filled with all these little tiny white particles, which is just fat. The same way your arm and your butt has become fat
Mm,
Has also become fat.
mm,
And fatty liver causes what we call inflammation. The liver doesn't like it, so it tries to fight it. And the liver becomes cirrhotic, fibrotic, and hard. And so just being overweight can also lead to liver disease.
mm.
But the end of all liver diseases is what we call cirrhosis and then ultimately liver cancer. So, talking about the holidays, some people think that Christmas means let's get drunk.
Mm.
They don't see Christmas in any way but let's get drunk, especially New Year's Eve. So, I want you to know that the more you drink, the more you're hurting the liver.
Mm.
It might not complain. In fact, it is the most quiet organ in the whole body. You know why? The liver can be diseased for 10 years with absolutely no sign. You know how I said the high blood pressure can cause kidney failure, diabetes will lose their feet. If you have liver disease, you would never know.
Mm.
The only way you might know is maybe they'll do a CAT scan or they'll check your liver enzymes, but it's very quiet. It just sits and watches you drink and drink. And then one day you realize your skin is getting yellow or your tummy is getting big. And they'll check and you realize that your liver has failed.
Mm.
And the only thing that's left is to replace the kidney, the liver. And so you have to wait and see if somebody will give you a liver transplant or be willing to share their liver with you.
So we all have two livers.
We only have one.
So how would somebody share theirs if you only have one?
Well, some people can cut part of their liver and it can be used to be part of a liver transplant,
Oh, okay.
or they wait for somebody to die and then they take their liver and give it to they call it, you know, cadaveric liver transplant. I mean donation transplant.
And does it have to match like
Oh yes. Otherwise, the body will reject it. It has to be a matched liver. But people have taken portions of the liver and they've used it to donate to others.
Mm,
But we all got one. So why you want to burn yours and come for mine?
right. And apart from, so another thing, like you don't have to explain in detail, but apart from alcohol, what else damages the liver?
Well, the most common thing in Africa is hepatitis B and C.
Okay, how about here?
And then even HIV can affect the liver too. And then some people who take, so that's the thing about taking herbal concoctions. Some herbal concoctions can be very toxic to the liver.
Right.
Other things that can hurt the liver is people who take Tylenol in overdose,
Mm.
either intentionally or unintentionally.
Okay.
Some people ingest lots of, I mean, you're not supposed to take more than 2 grams of Tylenol in any one day.
Mm.
4 grams. Some people take lots of it, and over time. So actually, 2 things can happen. So you can go into acute liver failure, where within a matter of days, the person is confused, they look yellow and jaundiced, and the liver is failing. And then you have chronic liver disease. That's the one that just sits and watches you drink and drink and drink until one day it tells you that, you know what? I've had enough of your nonsense. Excuse me, I didn't mean to say that. But you know, the liver will just say, I'm tired, I'm done. I'm not working anymore. I'm on overtime. I'm not doing this anymore. That's chronic liver disease. Then there's acute liver disease from people who take overdose, or sometimes it could be a large amount of alcohol. It'll just tip it into what we call alcoholic hepatitis. And that one can also lead to liver failure.
Wow. Thank you so much, Doctor. I think we've gotten a lot of information to make us aware as we enjoy these holidays. Angie, I don't know if you have any.
I think we've had enough information to not only be aware, but to actually implement change. We cannot do what we do not know, as far as I'm concerned. And so I believe you said earlier that without this type of information, you know, we would be at a loss, you know. And so I first want to say thank you so much, Dr. Bertha, for sharing your time, your knowledge, your expertise in such a giving way. You know, I've yet to do a radio show where props are at hand and I can actually see, oh, so my liver is over here. And I never knew where the pancreas was. So I appreciated that.
Yeah.
But I do have a question. I think you said that she had to go, though, yes?
Yes, Dr. Ayi, yes, I know she has. Yeah, she has to run.
Okay. So, really quickly, foods for you mentioned kale, you mentioned spinach, you mentioned, I'm sure salads when you said greens and stuff. But my question is for Black Americans. Now, I've had all type of, stew made by Ghanaians as well as the Igbo people as well as the Yoruba people. But for Black Americans, we do eat vegetables, but is it not in how you prepare your vegetables? Because I use vegetables all the time, but I cook them. I really cook them. So have we cooked the nutrients out?
I don't think so. I mean, there's certain nutrients like folic acid or folates. You can overcook and destroy some of them, but the green, the magnesium, those things that would end up making you healthy, you don't really cook them out. Otherwise, Africans do it because like if we're cooking spinach, we cook it to a boil and boil that. African food takes hours to prepare.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So there are some things you can't really boil out per se. So there are some things that will get destroyed by heat. Others will not. But then at the end of the day, even if the heat is going to destroy half of it, and you consistently continue to eat lots of vegetables or make sure your diet, that's why you should visit Africa sometime, because you don't have to make any effort to do vegetables, because people will literally bring mangoes to you and their pineapples and pawpaw. I mean, it's great visiting Africa. So everybody should make an effort to at least go back once in a while and just get sugar cane and that healthy breeze of food.
I want to look up the airfare right now. Go ahead. Carry on.
Okay, thank you so much. I've seen people drop syrup on their pancakes, like it's they just pour it on there, and then ketchup, and then all kinds of sugar. And I think that what you've told us this evening should make us all of us aware of the amount of sugar intake and all these things that we put in our body, and be aware of, and also implement healthy changes. So thank you again, Dr. Ayi. We would like to wrap up this evening. It's 7:44 p.m. 7:44 p.m. Central. And the show is coming to an end, and we really, really want to thank everyone that has joined us. We couldn't even, to be honest, we couldn't even give you the opportunity to ring into the show, and I think that we had also missed our. We didn't display the phone number the entire show. So, pardon us. The time has come to. We have to wrap up this evening show. It's been wonderful, Dr. Aye. Your closing remarks as we take leave of today's episode.
I think everyone should try and make exercise a habit this year. If you didn't do it last year, make it your New Year resolution. You don't have to join a gym to exercise. You can do it in your own house. Buy some dumbbells and check your number. Know your number. And by your number, I mean your blood pressure. And if it's high, do something about it.
Thank you once again. Angie, closing remarks, please.
I am so grateful for our listening audience. So I'm really grateful for the fact that Dr. Bertha also would tie in God and the importance of knowing how to not just look at this from a scientific point of view. And so my last words would be to our listening audience and those who will visit for the replay is to ask God. James 1:5 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God and he will give it to you without reproach. And so when we ask God to guide us in preparing for our family's health, I think that we are really doing our family and ourselves some of the greatest opportunities that we could ever have when we take pride in how we feed our families. It signals out that we care about our temples that God has given us. And so thank you, Dr. Bertha. Thank you, King Senna, for doing a wonderful job and making sure that Dr. Bertha was able to share with us. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you all for
Right.
making it a great episode. Look, we need you all alive. We need humanity safe and healthy so we can keep making our societies a better place. Remember, next week, Wednesday, will be the last of the year. We'll be here at 6, closing the year out, thanking and appreciating all our viewers and our guests. Next year in January, we're going to be starting from Tuesdays. It's going to be Tuesday. So remind your friends and your family members. We're going to be putting out flyers to remind you all as well. A big encouragement to everyone that's watching. Remember, we are a 501c3 non-for-profit, the Progressive Minds Show. So we want to encourage you all to donate. The year is going to an end. You can file your taxes with it. If you know organizations or institutions or even individuals who have fat wallets,
Yes.
this is the only time we need fat things. Angie, we agree, right, on that?
Yes, we agree. Yes.
So please send your donations to Progressive Minds. We only use it to build our communities. We use it to have conversations like this, bring very great, important guests as these. Next year, I want to bring even presidents of countries. And so your contributions will go a long way. And also our community events, very important. So we're encouraging you all to be part of the process. Go ahead, Angie.
I forgot one thing. I wanted to give a shout out to Karen Peterson, who's back on, and she shares our radio shows with her listening audience, as well as I believe her school's listening audience. And so huge shout out to her. And for everyone who is taking the time out to share these informative videos that we put up for your benefit. Tamoy Newman says, great show again. Thank you, Tamoy. Appreciate you so much.
Well, yeah. So see you next week. God bless. Remember, to whom much is given, much is required. We shall be here to build next week, God's grace. Angie, have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
All right, bye.